Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Genesis Maldonado, and I'm here with the legendary Dr. Steve Jex. How are you?
I'm doing fine today, thanks.
Steve Jex is an emeritus professor and an industry leader in the world of industrial organizational psychology. He has authored multiple textbooks and now co-authoring a forthcoming book titled Chronic Illness in the Workplace: Theory, Research, and Implications for Organizations, with Dr. Kenzie Dye, an IO psychologist who specializes in employee health and well-being. The book is being published by Oxford University and will likely be released in spring of 2027. Nice. All good things, Dr. Jex.
Yeah, we're really excited about it.
All right, so let's kick things off. How are you this morning? What does an industry leader like you, how does he start off his mornings?
Pretty early, actually. Get up around 4. Yeah.
Early bird.
Most normal people don't. I go to the gym around 5 and usually get into my office. Since I'm emeritus, I don't have a regular office, but I share some office space. But I come to campus just about every day, so I'm around usually in the mornings here, and so yeah, that's kind of how I get myself going.
We talk a lot outside on campus, and you just love to keep your hands busy and doing so many projects.
Yeah.
So what are you hoping to accomplish by writing the textbook that you are?
Well, the big thing really that Kenzie and I wanted to do is really summarize the research on chronic illness. This is actually more of her area, her research area. It's her dissertation focus. But there's been a lot of research really within the last, I would say, maybe 5 years on chronic illness in the workplace for a variety of reasons. There's a lot more people that are working with chronic illnesses, both physical and mental illnesses. So we wanted to summarize the research in that area and also really kind of raise awareness about chronic illness in the workplace, because there are a lot of people who, and we may get into this later, but there are a lot of people who have chronic illnesses but don't disclose that they have them. And so really those are the two big things we wanted to do, just summarize the research literature, as good academics. Well, I'm an academic. Well, I was an academic. Kenzie's not, but summarize the research and also to raise awareness.
Yeah, awareness in something like chronic illness, where so many people in the world struggle with something like that. And I mean, everyone has to work, right? And to some degree.
Right.
So yeah, it's very important. And I think it's a great thing that you guys are spreading awareness on that. Can you tell me a little bit more about your background, specifically about prior book writings and research interests?
Yeah, my background, I'll give you the research first. I'm basically, my focus for a long time has been stress in the workplace. I'm kind of known as an occupational stress researcher. And so the big thing I've focused on is individual differences in the workplace in occupational stress. So I focused a lot on, throughout my career, on things that make a difference in how people respond to stressors. Things like I've looked at self-efficacy, self-esteem, things that kind of answer the question of why some people are stressed at work and other people are not, given the same conditions. And I think more recently I've gotten obviously chronic illness is something I've gotten interested in, but I've also gotten interested in some other things, some more specific aspects of stress, mistreatment, uncivil behavior. I've done some writing on retirement decision-making specifically, and some other more, I would say, contemporary topics like work-life balance, telework, things like that. So, but I would say overall, occupational stress is kind of what I'm known for. As far as the writing, I started, actually, the first book that I wrote was back in I believe it was 98. I wrote a book on pretty small book actually, on stress and job performance for SAGE. And then after that, the second book that I wrote was, I think you made mention of it, a textbook, organizational psychology, scientist practitioner approach. And that book, I actually just finished, prior to my retirement, I finished the 4th edition of it. So those are the main books, and I also wrote one other one with Tom Britt from Clemson on thriving under stress, which was actually published by Oxford University Press, which is the publisher Kenzie and I are working with. So I have pretty fairly extensive track record in book writing.
It definitely sounds like it.
Yep.
I know that chronic illness is your bread and butter, but is there any topics that really stand out to you that relate to a work environment? For example, I know lots of maybe managers, bosses out there would really like to improve their work environment in an office space. Do you have any tips on the research that you've done of how they could do that? Or
I would say a couple things, and I think one relates to research I've done, and one probably doesn't as much. I would say creating a civil work environment. One of the big reasons people leave jobs is because they don't get along with people. So creating both in terms of how employees get along with each other, how leaders treat people. I think basically there are civility training interventions and things like that. So sort of promoting a civil work environment. I would say the other thing too, and this is probably less in my research space, facilitating work-life balance.
That's a big one. That
right
buzzword for everyone, I believe.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, I don't want to get into it too much, but a lot of it's because of technology. People can be plugged into work pretty much anytime, anywhere, and sort of promoting a healthy culture of work-life balance. I mean, that's not the only thing, but I would say of the things that I'm interested in and that I've worked on over the years, I would say those are probably the two biggest things: civility and work-life balance.
And that goes pretty hand in hand with chronic illness, work-life balance, and trying to balance the illness with work, right?
Yeah.
So that's great stuff. Can you give me a brief overview of the major topics that will be covered in your textbook?
Yeah, I mean the big thing. So we'll get into this a little bit more about our what we submitted in the process, but basically what we're going to do is kind of start broadly. We talk about the legal framework, legal protections for people with chronic illness. We really start the book off with defining what a chronic illness is, because there's a lot of terms, like there's chronic illness, disability, sickness. There's a lot of terminology that's used that is maybe misunderstood. So we kind of define what a chronic illness is. We also talk about the theoretical foundation of chronic illness research. A lot of that theoretical foundation comes from social psychology. One of Kenzie's main areas of expertise is identity management.
Okay.
So we cover theories related to the people's perceptions of how chronic illness fits into their social identity. And there's a lot of theories in social psychology, like social identity theory, that relate to that. So our second chapter covers really the theoretical foundations of chronic illness research. We also talk about the methodological foundations. A lot of chronic illness research is qualitative. A lot of it's...
Can you help me
Sure.
Understand better? And for the audience, maybe can you explain what qualitative means? And when you talk about chronic illness, you mentioned that at the beginning of the textbook, you go over what it is, because it can be many things.
Yeah.
So can you kind of dive into that a little bit more for me?
Sure. Well, I'll handle that first. I mean, basically what a chronic illness is, it's something that the chronic, obviously it's part of it. It's a condition that is basically going to be with somebody long term. And it's also something that requires active management. on the part of the person. So think of somebody who maybe like somebody who's diabetic or something like that, requires active management. And it's also something that has periods of remission where a person might be able to function pretty normally. Think about somebody who maybe has cancer. They might be in remission and pretty much they're functioning very normally. So those are really the main things of what a chronic illness is. So think of like diabetics, people who might have, cancer's another one, rheumatoid arthritis. There's research on those. So that's kind of that's pretty much what how it's defined in the research literature is what a chronic illness is. And what was the second question?
Can you help me understand what does qualitative mean? What does quantitative mean?
Okay.
There's so many statistics in IO, and even I sometimes have issues, keeping track of everything. So.
Well, actually, the best way to explain it, actually, Kenzie, I can tell you a little bit about Kenzie's dissertation. So she was interested. She did a mixed methods study looking at how, it's really interesting study too, because it's looking at how people with chronic illnesses changed their jobs. So take it upon themselves to make changes in their jobs. It's called job crafting. And so what she did for that, for her dissertation, is she gave people survey questions on it's a crowdsourcing platform. It's called Cloud Research. So they actually filled out surveys that people use a lot in our field. So that would be quantitative. Okay. Mm-hmm. And she also, in the other part of it to me, which was probably the most interesting part, is she also used focus groups. And basically what that is, it's like a group interview. It's kind of like what we're doing now to some extent, but we also used Cloud Research on that. So we had people, we recruited people who had chronic illnesses and basically just asked them questions about how they manage their chronic illness with their, with their job, demands of their job and so on. And it was really interesting information, but qualitative is just basically just asking people. And I think both are pretty important. It's the numbers are good to have because you can do all those, interesting statistical. Most people think they're interesting.
We love statistics here. We love statistics.
Some people don't, but you can do all that in the statistics. But the qualitative is really interesting too because you can get into a little bit more depth in how people and the one thing that we found in those. I was involved in helping with moderate the folks. She really did most of it, but one of the big things that we found is flexible work arrangements, and remote work is a big thing that people with chronic illnesses want.
Yeah, and a big shift right now.
Sure, yeah, and so people do both. So.
Very cool.
Yep.
This is a question. This next one that I'm about to ask. That I've been wondering for a while now, so I hope you're ready.
Sure.
Could you describe the process of proposing a book to a major publisher like Oxford University Press?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I've done it a couple times. Well, no, more than a couple times. So basically what you do, the way we did, I can kind of explain, probably the best way to explain it is how we did ours. So basically, I contacted usually you contact an editor at the publishing company. So I contacted, the person's name is Dana Bliss, who's the psychology editor at Oxford, and basically just, emailed him and said, hey, what would you think about publishing, you think Oxford would have an interest in publishing a book on chronic illness in the workplace? And he was pretty enthused about it, and said, oh yeah, we, that's something that we think is an interesting topic. And so, so he was interested in it. And so once that happens, what you then do is put together a proposal which describes what the book is about. You have to do a pretty extensive outline of the book, the table of contents, what's in each of the chapters. You also have to you also have to analyze competition. So because really you're proposing a product
Right.
that the publisher is going to try to sell, and hopefully people will buy a lot of our books. So you have to propose what the competition is. Is it worthwhile for them to take this on, from a financial standpoint? And the other thing too is you have to suggest reviewers for the proposal, and then the proposal then goes out to reviewers. They review. I've done reviewing for publishers, including Oxford. I've done for some other publishers too. Once you get the reviews back, once we got them back, Kenzie and I had to revise the proposal, and then resubmit it. And then once the editor's happy with it, then it goes to an editorial board with the publisher, and then they make a decision on whether they want to publish it or not. And fortunately for us, they accepted our revised proposal. We got a contract, and
So that kind of all sounds like an extensive process. About how long do you think that takes?
From the time that I mean, it took about a year, I would say, from the time that I talked to from the psychology editor till we actually signed the contract to write the book. So it takes a little while because obviously, I wasn't retired at the time, so I had some other things that I was doing too. So it can take a while depending on how many directions that you're pulled in.
Okay. And since I would assume you've been in this industry for a while, this isn't your first rodeo.
Sure.
Would you say it gets easier with each textbook?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it definitely gets a little bit easier because you kind of know what to expect. I mean, I was really fortunate because before I wrote my organizational psych book, I had written the smaller book, which was so to compare so I'll do a little comparison here. The book that I wrote for Sage, which was my first book, was, I believe, 200-page manuscript. Okay. My textbook was 1,200. So it was 6 times as large as but it was kind of the same process, essentially. You write the chapters and, they review them, and, you'd go through the copy editing process. So I was able to go through a smaller version first. But I think that's, once you've done it a few times, it definitely gets a little bit easier. You know what to expect and anticipate.
Nice. So finally, what is the status of the book right now?
Yeah, the status, we actually, okay, so we have drafts of all the way we're doing. Kenzie and I decided, we kind of made the decision of how we wanted to sort of get the book done, how we wanted to, the procedure we wanted to use, I guess you could call it. So we've got drafts of all the chapters done, basically. So we have drafts of all of them, which I did a lot of that work. And now she's actually, Kenzie is in the process of going through and editing and rewrite and doing rewrites of parts of chapters that I wrote. I tend to be a little more, which is why her and I collaborate really well together. I tend to be a little bit more of a free writer. Not writer, free writer. I just sit down and write, and she tends to be a little bit more careful and she knows the topic better than I do. So her input, the way she's rewritten parts of it. So we're in a good spot right now. We have, like I say, all the chapter drafts written, and we're sort of revising the chapter drafts and creating other material for the book right now. So it's well along the way.
So as someone who's, never written a textbook, you're in your first draft right now, or is it in the more final stages?
It's good. I would say it is in the first, but we're very close to finalizing the chapters. We're starting to finalize the chapters right now because we have to do editing. Plus, there's other material in the chapters that we proposed, and which I think you might ask about. But yeah, we have some other things that we're going to put at the end of chapters. And we're also we're interviewing. One of the things that's really neat about the book, I think, that people will enjoy, is we're interviewing people that have chronic illnesses and putting those quotes in the body of the chapters to kind of reinforce points that we make in the book. So we're in the process of doing the interviews and sort of organizing that interview information. So we're definitely right on track.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Hard numbers is always great, but it's always good to hear the perspective of the people who are actually going through it. It definitely, I feel like it reaches out to the audience and really touches that personal aspect, that relatability.
Right. Yeah.
That's really cool. I think that's very interesting. So I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure on you. When do you believe the textbook will be released?
That's a hard thing to pin down, only because the way the process works. I will give you a date. I will give you one, but it's kind of hard to pin down because of the way the process works with books. What they do is they send out our chapter. Once we submit the chapters, they send them out for review, and reviewers send us feedback. We respond to it. Then there's copy editing, and then it goes into production. We're estimating that it's going to come out probably April of 2027.
Okay.
Yeah, April of 20. And they do that there's kind of a strategic reason that they put that we kind of wanted it to come out then, because there's the SIOP conference, Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology conference, and Oxford advertises a lot of books there. There's the American Psychological Association in August. There's American Sociological Association. A lot of people in sociology do research on chronic illness, so it's a very so that's kind of the timing that they wanted as far as when the book is released. But it's going to be, it'll be available on Amazon and all the other outlets for book buying.
Wow, that's amazing. I really look forward to reading your textbook and, being able to see everything that we just talked about today. I wish you and Dr. Dye the best of luck in all your endeavors, and thank you so much for being on this podcast with me.
No, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
All right, guys, have a good one.
All right.